When the rescue team reached him, they expected relief. They expected shock. They expected a man barely holding on. Instead, he looked up at them calmly and said, "Don't go back for the others." Not "be careful," not "they went that way." Just 4 words, spoken clearly. Don't go back. No explanation followed. This is a true story. It comes from a high-altitude rescue operation where official records exist, but clear explanations do not. There were no reports of violence, no evidence of an attack, no sudden storm that should have caused panic. And yet, 5 people went into the mountains. Only 1 came out. What makes this case disturbing isn't what happened to the others. It's the behavior of the survivor. Because after being found alive, after days alone in the cold, after knowing his companions were still missing, he insisted they should be left there. Not because it was dangerous, not because it was impossible, but because, in his words, they're better where they are. In this episode, we're going to examine what we know. We'll walk through the timeline carefully. We'll stay grounded in documented facts, rescue records, and survivor testimony. No theories, no speculation, just the events as they unfolded. And the question investigators could never answer: why would the only survivor try to stop the rescue? The group consisted of 5 experienced hikers, not tourists, not casual adventurers. They were familiar with multi-day treks, cold weather camping, and remote terrain. Several had completed similar routes before. This detail matters because nothing about their preparation suggested recklessness. They carried layered cold weather gear, navigation tools, emergency rations, short-range radios. They also had a favorable forecast. Clear conditions were expected for the first 2 days, with light snow later in the week. Their plan was simple. They would hike in early, establish a base camp, summit the following day, and return the same way they came. No deviation, no alternative routes, just a straightforward out-and-back trek. On the first day, everything went exactly as planned. They made good time on the trail. They set camp before dusk. They ate together. No one reported discomfort. No one mentioned fear. Nothing unusual was logged in their notes or messages. To anyone looking at the trip from the outside, this was routine, unremarkable. The kind of outing that happens thousands of times a year without incident. But sometime during the night, that changed. According to later testimony, one member of the group woke suddenly. Not because of noise, not because of cold. He said he woke with the certainty that something was wrong. At first, he couldn't explain it, only that staying where they were felt dangerous. He described it as pressure, urgency, a sense that they shouldn't be there anymore. The others listened. They did what experienced hikers do. They checked the area around the campsite. They looked for signs of wildlife. They checked the weather. They found nothing. No tracks, no movement, no change in conditions. But the feeling didn't pass. As the hours went on, the man became increasingly focused on leaving. Not later, not after sunrise, immediately. He couldn't articulate a reason, only that waiting felt wrong. Fear without evidence is difficult to address, but fear like this is also hard to ignore. By early morning, the group faced a decision. As daylight came, the man's behavior changed. His urgency sharpened. He began insisting that they move away from the campsite. Not downhill, not toward shelter, just away. The others tried to reason with him. They pointed out the weather, the supplies, the plan. Nothing worked. Eventually, a compromise was reached. They would split temporarily. 2 members would stay behind to break camp and organize supplies. 3 would move ahead to scout the route forward and assess conditions. It was meant to be brief, a practical decision. The anxious man went with the scout group. This choice would later become the final moment the group was whole. Because after this, no confirmed contact occurred between them again. As the scout group moved ahead, visibility began to deteriorate. Low cloud rolled in. Wind increased. Radio contact became unreliable. Short messages broke apart, then stopped entirely. At first, this wasn't considered alarming. Radio issues were common in the terrain. But when hours passed without contact, concern grew. By late afternoon, the two remaining at camp attempted to relocate. They were never confirmed to have reached the others. This was the last point where the timeline remains partially intact. After this moment, events can only be reconstructed from what was found later, and from the words of the man who survived. When communication stopped, there was no immediate panic. The terrain was known to disrupt radios. Weather conditions, while worsening, were still considered manageable. The two members who remained behind assumed the scout group would return. Minutes passed, then an hour. Still nothing. By late afternoon, the temperature began to drop more quickly than expected. Wind funneled through the valley. Cloud cover thickened. The decision was made to move. They packed what they could and began following the planned route forward, expecting to reconnect. They never did. No one can say exactly where the two remaining hikers went after leaving the campsite. What is known comes from what was found later, and what wasn't. As night fell, conditions worsened rapidly. Visibility dropped to a few meters. Snow began falling sideways. This was not the kind of storm that usually triggers panic, but it was enough to disorient. Rescue records show that temperature fluctuations became unpredictable. Cold pockets formed in low areas. Wind chill increased exposure risk. This is the point where most hikers would shelter and wait, which is why what happened next is difficult to explain. Of the three who moved ahead, only one would survive. According to his later account, the group did not argue after separating. There was no conflict, no confrontation, but there was a change in atmosphere. He described it as tension without cause. As they moved forward, the anxious man became quieter, not panicked, not frantic, focused. He insisted they keep moving even as visibility dropped. He believed stopping was dangerous. Again, he could not explain why. At some point, the other two slowed. They wanted to wait, to regroup. This is where accounts become unclear. What is known is that the three did not stay together. Whether by choice or circumstance, they separated. Only one continued moving. Watch out for part 2.